Before we do, I just wanted to welcome everyone. We are here to essentially see a new product at work, and thank you for those that RSVP via the Meetup. We continue to create the opportunity for you to connect with real-life practitioners in Agile. In this case, we have the pleasure of having Radus software provide a demo for us for their Metronome tool, which is a pretty nifty tool that allows for the digital execution of save in a distributed environment. And we have the honor of having Raj be our presenter today, who is actually the product owner for Metronome. So when she heard of the community and how active we are, she wanted to come in herself and provide us with a demo, and of course answer questions, as well as provide additional material to how to execute a PI in a distributed form. We've had various versions of this. This would allow us to have one more tool that perhaps may solve most of our problems when it comes to the distributed team and safe execution. So without further ado, I want to pass it on to Raj and welcome her into the Meetup. Thank you, Raj, for being here.
Ernesto, I don't think I can hear you clearly. You're breaking continuously.
Is that right?
Raj, we can hear you well. You're coming across very clearly.
Okay, my audio was a little broken up. Is that right?
Hello, everyone. Ernesto, you were breaking continuously. I don't think we heard you properly. At least I could not. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, it was, we couldn't hear you very well. Don't worry, I can, I'm very good at doing my own introduction and also talking about my software. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Raj.
Ernesto, thank you once again for the wonderful introduction. We heard bits and pieces of it, but thank you so much for inviting me to your meetup, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know we are all in various time zones. So very hello to everyone, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm not sure if you heard my name. My name is Raj Sankavaram, and I am the product owner of Metronome. Radus is the creator of Metronome. I'm really excited to be showing you all, giving you a short tour of Metronome today. So before I begin the demo, I've put together a slide deck, and I would love to, start with reviewing the slide deck, because that's going to help you orient, give you a brief introduction about our company Radus, as well as a brief introduction about our platform, our Agile Lifecycle Management platform, Metronome, why we created it, and what was the rationale behind creating it. So with that, let's get started. I just wanted to also make this interactive. So at any point of time, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me so that I can answer the question, or, show you that piece of a Metronome in a little more detail. Yay, a nice picture of me, right? I don't look too bad here. One of the pictures where I like how I look, so obviously I put that up here. A little bit about me. I have many years of project, program, and portfolio management experience. I've worked as a consultant both for the US Army and US Air Force. And after working for many, many years as a consultant, I thought it was high time to start my own management consulting firm. So I started Radus in 2014, and now very proud and happy to share with you all that I'm the product owner of Metronome. So a little bit about Radus. Radus is a management IT consulting firm, and this colorful wheel that you see here talks about our core competencies. Obviously, we are here to talk about this red oval, right, which is why we are here today, to take a look at Metronome. Hopefully, you're all curious to learn about Metronome, and I'm going to talk about Metronome. So Metronome stands for Orchestrated Agile. A few years ago, when, like I said, we were initially a consulting firm, and during one of our consulting gigs, that's when we were exposed to the Scaled Agile Framework, also called as SAFE. And we wanted to develop a product around the Scaled Agile Framework, also called as SAFE, right? So Metronome is a tool that helps your Agile teams and teams of Agile teams, also called as Agile Release Train, right? Our art to scale and to scale your lean and Agile practices very quickly and easily. So that was our design. That was our design principles, right? So when we thought about creating this tool, there were several factors we considered, but one of the few things that went into the foundation behind our design was to build something that was inexpensive, lightweight, and something that did not require a lot of administration overhead. We also, again, right here, I wanted to highlight that the platform over which Metronome is built is called as Concept Lambda, and it's a concept JavaScript JS framework, and this enables us to configure things very quickly. I know most of you work in different various kinds of organizations, and nobody does Agile the same way, right? We all have our own versions of Agile running in there. Even though we are saying we are practicing SAFE or Scaled Agile Framework, right? We have our own versions of doing things, and I just wanted to highlight that the framework that on which Metronome is built makes it very easy for us to do the configurations, right? So whether it is adding new fields or perhaps configuring your Kanban board, adding a few more workflow items or removing the workflow items, all that becomes very easy for us to configure and enhance for your organization. So when organizations adopt Metronome, they see the benefits right away, right? Obviously, you have teams of Agile teams. You want to be able to visualize and track the dependencies. You want to, as teams go in and start their program execution, you want to be able to visualize the blockers. You want to be able to track the blockers and try to remove these blockers quickly, right? That prevents you from delivering value to your customer. So all of that becomes easy. You can visualize the flow of value. You can look at all your backlog, all the items in your backlog. You can see the flow of value as your features and stories move from one phase in the Kanban to another. You'll be able to visualize and you'll be able to communicate and collaborate very easily and quickly. So those are some of the benefits organizations can realize quickly. I love this picture. I found this on PowerPoint, and I thought this is everyone's story right now, right? Thanks to our friends at COVID-19 Incorporated, right? We cannot do our face-to-face or in-person meetings anymore. All of us are thrown into this virtual reality universe where we can look back on our wall and see the stickies. We can see the program board. We cannot visualize our stories and features moving from one phase of the Kanban to another, right? How do we view our dependencies? So teams are finding new ways to do work, right? New ways to visualize deliverables, new ways to work around all these issues that we have. So what can teams do? How can we teams still do their planning together, right? Even though we are 100% dispersed, how can we still plan together? How can we still execute together, right? We can stop working, right? We still have to deliver value continuously to our customer. So how can we do that? So obviously, we all have to rely heavily on technology. Our tools have to be dependable and reliable, right? And our communication devices cannot stop working because if that happens, right, teams will be scrambling and will be finding alternatives. So the technology that we have to depend on has to be reliable and dependable. And Metronome, I'm very excited to say that Metronome is one such amazing technology. And you'll see that, right, as I show you all the various capabilities in Metronome today in this via short demo, you'll see why I say Metronome is one such amazing technology, right? It's one single source of truth, wherein teams will be able to access all the information very easily and quickly. So one of the things that we face today is that in this virtual reality world is teams are no longer working in that close proximity. So communication and collaboration becomes so much more important and vital, right, in this distributed world. How can teams go in and visualize where are we today? What is the status of our, let's say, our deliverables? Where are we today? Are we working on delivering this? Are we delivering value to a customer? How can they see that? So let me show you demo time, right? Let me take you straight into Metronome. Hopefully all of you can see Metronome. Yes? Okay, I'm assuming that it's a yes sign.
We do.
We can see it, Raj. It looks great.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the confirmation. So what you see here is the landing page in Metronome, right? So for today's demo, I'm going to let's all pretend to be part of this portfolio, which is SBA portfolio that has 2 agile release trains or ARTs, right? You are also called as programs. For those of you who are very new to SAFe, right, you have your civilian art and your DoD art, right? So this landing page gives us this visibility on where we are. It not only provides us a static view of our program and all the teams underneath it, it also provides us this dynamic view of where we are within our program, which program increment are we in, how far along have we delivered. Right, let me take you to the train that we are going to pretend, right? I have added some nice features and stories to this train, which is called as the DoD art. And so let's all board this particular train for our metronome journey today. And let's see how all of us who are part of this train can go in and plan together, can go in and visualize our dependencies between our teams, and can also go in and execute and deliver value to our customer together. So this particular DoD art, as you can see, is in PI 7, and it's about 80% complete. So this DoD art has all these teams underneath it, right? DevOps team, integration team. They can be as many teams as, you typically, we have about 10 to 15 teams, right, under each art, right? In this exercise, there are about 7 or 8 teams. So you see that this particular Agile release train is in PI 7, and it's about 80% complete. Like I said before, 3 out of the 4 iterations are completed, right? And the 4th iteration is in progress. There are also visual indicators that Metronome provides to clearly emphasize where exactly we are, right? Check mark clearly shows that this is completed, and hourglass indicates that this is still ongoing. So all that can be clearly, there is no ambiguity, right? All of us can clearly see where we are at any point of time. And not only that, right, everything that you see here is accessible with a single click, right? Let's say our program level stakeholders, like our release train engineers, our program managers, all of them, let's say they want to go in and see what are some of my milestones, what are some of my, what's my program calendar look like, right? They can access that with a single click, right? Let's say they want to go in and take a look at what are the features that are going to be implemented in the current PI. They can access that with a single click. Let's say our team level stakeholders, our scrum masters, our product owners, they can go in and access team level information with a single click. They can access iteration level information with a single click. Backlogs, our program backlog and our team backlogs can be accessed with a single click. And transparency and alignment is very critical in a distributed environment, right? Or rather fully dispersed environment. How can our stakeholders go in and make sure everybody is working towards a common vision, right? So our portfolio stakeholders can go in and define the vision here, right? They can actually go in and define the strategic teams, right? Our OKRs can be defined here. Everybody is clear on what needs to be delivered, right? What is the strategy of our portfolio, right? What is the solution that we are trying to deliver? So our portfolio stakeholders can go in and identify the solution intent. What is the solution that we are trying to deliver to our customer? All that information can be clearly entered in one central place in Metronome. So let's go back to our PowerPoint, right? And see where we were. Where were we? Over right here. Okay. Let's see what's the next thing that I want to show you. I want to show you how can teams go in and visualize the deliverables, right? Obviously, we are 100% dispersed. So when everyone is dispersed, how can we go in and visualize what are some of the deliverables that are coming up in the pipeline? What are some of the major events that are coming up? And how do we prepare for these major events or milestones, right? What are some of the features that are going to be delivered in each of these releases? How can Metronome help you or help teams go in and visualize all of that? Let's go in and take a look at that. So again, let's go back. And before I jump into our DODR, I just showed you how teams can go in and define the solution, right? There are several places, several reports, dashboards, graphs that Metronome provides you so that you can always visualize, right? Here is your solution, and how is the solution being realized in the form of features? Now, how can you go in and visualize when are these features being delivered to the customer, right? This is one such report. Here you can see this multi-factor authentication solution is being delivered as part of this feature, right? Analyze customer response. And our art, right, our DOD art is working on this feature, and it's going to be ready at the end of this PI7, at the end of this program increment, right? The status is, it's again the same hourglass, which tells me clearly that it's under implementation. And this particular feature, as is and to be business, right? This particular feature is again going to be part of our art, and it's still in the backlog. And that's why you see the sign telling me that it's still not under implementation. Whereas this particular feature, right, was delivered as part of this PI. So you see the same set of visual indicators that were displayed earlier on our landing page are also shown here. So the look and the feel and the UI is very simple, so that everybody can clearly understand and visualize where we are and what is being delivered. Now let's go in and click on this particular feature, right? Analyze customer response and see, we said it's under implementation. So you can clearly see 82% of the stories have been completed, right? If you want to see what are the stories that are completed, you can click on the stories tab, and you see most of the stories are completed. There are some stories that are still in progress, and that's probably why this is still under implementation. I can, this way, I can clearly track as I start, building my solutions, right? Building my product or creating my product. I can clearly track the progress I've made thus far. I can click on a particular story, and let's say I want to see, and let's say this was a story that's in progress, right? I can click on that story and visualize if the story is broken down into tasks. I can go in and see that as well. All that information becomes so much, teams can go in and access so much more easily. Let's go in and click on this DOD art. Before I take a short break and see if you have any questions, I want to show you the question that I posed earlier, right? How can teams go in and visualize the deliverables? So I pulled up this product roadmap in Metronome, and folks who were so used to Microsoft Project, right, who are used to that Gantt chart look and feel, will love this particular screen, right? You see it has the same drag and drop and zoom out and zoom in capability that we were so used to in Microsoft Project and Primavera P6, right? Where we are used to seeing all our Gantt charts, clearly showing us all the milestones. Very similar to that, but in an agile, taken in a lean agile world, right? So the idea here is teams can go in and see what are some of the major events that are coming up in my pipeline, and how can I go in and get ready for that? What about the releases, right? Where are we today, right, as far as this timeline is concerned, right? And what are the releases that are happening today, right? This release 6.0 has how many features are there that are going to be delivered as part of this release, right? You see there are about 11 features. And some of them are completed, some of them are still in backlog, some of them are being implemented. All that information can be clearly derived, right? I can click on this particular feature, and then I can go in and see the stories that I showed you before. All that becomes so much more easier, because everybody has access to this single version of truth. I can also go in and see where are my PIs, right? How are they aligned? Are they decoupled from my releases? My PI milestones, how about my objectives? So there's one other thing that this view brings together, right? It brings together two different kinds of stakeholders. You have your business stakeholders and you have your IT stakeholders. Now your business stakeholders are only interested in setting up your strategy, your objectives, right, for your particular program increment. So they can go in and set what are some of your objectives that will be delivered as part of this particular program increment. So that is something that the business will be interested. Now, our IT is more interested about delivering the enablers, right? Our architecture and infrastructure features, right? So they know they want to see the architecture runway that is being plotted here. You can clearly see in this PI7, at the end of this PI7, there are two infrastructure and enabler features that are going to be delivered, right? So it brings both your business and IT stakeholders, right? Your IT is all about delivering these features to the customer. So what needs to be done? What are my business facing features? What are my infrastructures or enablers that we need to work on? So all that information can be easily derived from this view. Just wanted to pause and see if you have any questions or comments as I go through. I've been talking for quite some time and I want to take a short break and see if you have any questions. Are you okay with the pace, or do you want me to cover something else or show something as I go through, click through these screens in Metronome?
Yeah, we're hearing you very well, Raj. And I know that my audio at first was a little choppy. I want to do a quick sound check. Are you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes, yes, we are able to hear you very well now.
Excellent. We do have a story. We do have one question from David. David, thank you for asking. What happens if stories are added during a PI at a rate that make the 82% misleading? Is there burn down or something to show me how many unplanned tasks are coming to the team?
Absolutely. Let me jump straight into the team, right? There are burn down charts. I'm going to jump straight into the particular iteration. As you go through your iteration, your features are something that generally stay frozen, right? As you go through your iteration execution, that's when you start identifying stories and tasks, right? In your iteration planning, you have identified most of the stories, right? This is your burn down chart. At any point of time, right? Our iteration has just started, right? The June 2nd, obviously we have not closed any stories. But when I go to my Kanban board and as I start marking my stories completed, right? As I mark my tasks completed and stories completed, right? That's when your progress here for your iteration gets updated and your burn down chart gets updated as well. I will show you in a short while because I want to wait till I finish the planning and then show you the execution, how these burn down charts get updated and how the progress gets updated here for this particular iteration. Any other questions before I continue?
David, did that answer your question?
We'll take silence to be golden. Yes, David say yes. We also have a small poll just to get a feel for the team and some of the challenges. I am going to launch a quick poll here. That is a one-question poll, and it is, what are the biggest challenges you are facing with remote safe? And by remote safe, we're saying we're referring to the fact that you are in a distributed environment today, and that you are still practicing safe but are facing some challenges. It is multiple, it allows for you to select multiple answers. So go ahead and select the ones that are most appropriate in your environment. And if you have others that are not listed here, feel free to click on others and then share some of that in the chat room for us to benefit from your perspective as well. Okay. I am going to end the poll here and share that for everyone to see. And hopefully you can see on your screen the results of that. It seems that many are facing the top challenge that we normally get, and that is that conducting a remote PI planning event is significantly challenging in a distributed environment. And then synchronizing team execution came in at an equal second to that. The others were also relevant in terms of how to connect the vision and the strategy to the execution, as well as tracking the execution itself throughout the PI, right? There were some that answered others. So if you have any other items that may not be listed here, please share that with us on the chat. And Raj, as we go, maybe it'll be useful or helpful for us to also hear how Metronome may be able to address some of these challenges. Okay.
Perfect. I'll do just that. The top two that everyone has mentioned about having difficulty with remote PI planning as well as execution, the program execution. So I'm going to focus those two in the coming, hopefully in the next 15-20 minutes. So let's talk about PI planning. Obviously, that is the most important ceremony within SAFE, right? Where you have teams of agile teams coming together in one big room and planning all their features and stories as much as they can, right? Even if they don't go all the way to the stories level, like David's point, right? You might have some stories identified at least for the first iteration, if not for all the other iterations down the road. Now, how can teams do that distributedly, right? They are 100% dispersed, and how can they do it? So obviously our RTEs, our Scrum Masters, our product owners, our product management have to do a lot more pre-PI planning. They have to make sure that everything is entered, of course, I'm going to use Metronome, in this case, into Metronome, right? Your epics are entered, your features are entered, your stories are, your features are broken down to stories as much as possible so that this PI planning becomes easier and smoother because all of us are distributed, right? Let's go in and see, let's go back to the portfolio screen and see how teams can do that. Let's begin at the portfolio Kanban, right? So anybody within our team, right? It doesn't have to be our RTs or Scrum Masters. Anybody within our team can go in and identify an epic, right? Epic is generally a large initiative. As long as this epic aligns to our strategy or our strategic teams, right? They can go in and click on this add epic here in our portfolio Kanban and enter the name of the epic and indicate whether it's a business or a enabler epic. Now, as they collect more and more information about the epic, right, they hover over this epic card and they have an ability to go in and do a quick edit as well as an enlarged edit, right? So I'm going to click on this enlarge icon that's going to open a new window where I can go in and enter all the information about the epic, right? I can go in and create a lean business case to make that go, no-go decision. Yes, I'm going to create the MVP for this epic, right? That's when I go in and break this epic down to features, right? Here you can see that this epic is broken down into all these features. So Metronome provides this hierarchical view of agile work items, right, which is very important because folks have to be able to see that what are all my features underneath my portfolio or program epic, and what are all the stories that are there under my feature, right? What we call it as a golden thread within Metronome. I'll just show you as I navigate, right? Let's say I'm interested in this particular feature, right? I'm going to right click and I open that into a new tab. Here I can go in and see, right, when this feature opens, I can clearly see what are all the stories that make up this feature. Again, the same idea, right? I can go in and open this particular story and see what are all the tasks that make up this story. So from a portfolio epic, I can drill down all the way to a feature and a story, and not just add features onto or break the epic down to a features and same continue along the road, but also track the progress along, right? As I pull them into implementation, I'll be able to track the progress of each of this agile work item. So now going back to planning, what are some of the things that the teams can do to plan ahead, right? They can obviously go in and identify the epic, right? Now let's go back into our DODR and see how we can break this epic down into features, right? We saw here, that's one way. Here I can go in and add features. Now the other way I can also do it is I can go to my particular program or art, and I go to my backlog screen. Here I can go in and add features and have everything ready for my PI planning. Now, the next thing I want to do is, obviously my backlog is well groomed. I have my features identified, sitting right there. How do I prioritize the feature and pull the feature with the highest value onto my upcoming PI? So WSJF, or weighted shortest job first method, is what SAFE recommends, and out of the box Metronome supports that. So how do we do that? Let us see, right? I can go in and enter scores for each of the values, right? And Metronome calculates the WSJF, right? That's the prioritization model. So now here you see 18 is the priority for this particular feature. Now I can sort by WSJF, and what does it do, right? So it sorts all the features sitting in the backlog, and I can pull this particular feature and say, I want to implement it in PI 8. See how easily product management will have, we can, not just create the epic feature and stories and have everything ready for the PI planning, but also do the prioritization and have everything ready for their PI planning. So now that we have all our features ready, right, let's go in and do our actual PI planning. So let me click on this PI 7, and let's assume that all of us have come together, right? Again, virtually, right? We cannot come together into our big room planning, but virtually we are together using the program board in Metronome. We access and we see all the features here that our product management identified, right? And then we might also see our team backlog, and we'll see all the iterations. Because we don't have enough time, right? I've already added a lot of stories, and I've completed some of them, right? I've done all that so that you can visualize it. So what's the next thing the team do during PI planning, right? The next step that they do is they want to go in and do a planning breakout session, right? What do they do in the planning breakout sessions, right? Each teams gather at their own table, and they, take these features that were identified earlier by the product management and break these features down to stories. see how easily, let's pretend we are the web application team. So I filtered the program board by my team. Now see how easily I can go in and add a story for this particular feature here, right? I can go in and enter the name of the story, identify the story points, indicate whether it's a business or an enabler, right? All that can be done right here. I can go in and pick my team, right? I can say I'll assign it to 7.4 because in this case, right, all these 3 iterations are completed. So I can do all that right here. So when I add the story, you see that Metronome adds it to that particular iteration. So this is one of the things that our team does. Now, what is the next thing that they do? As they finalize all their planning, right, they start identifying dependencies between stories, between features, between a feature and a story. How can they do the same thing using Metronome? So notice what happens. I click on this checkbox, right, show dependencies across teams, and I've already identified these dependencies, and you can see that dependencies can be added easily using this add dependency option. I can go in and say this is the story that has to be completed before this story can be started, right? When I do that, these red lines are added, indicating that there is a dependency between these 2 stories. Notice how easily teams will be able to visualize and track their dependencies across stories and features, right? The next thing that teams go in and do is they go in and roam the risks, right? We provide you with an option to go in and classify these risks based on their likelihood and severity of occurrence, so they can do that as well, right? They'll also go in and assign a business value for the objectives, right? These are the objectives that our RTEs, our program managers identified, right, prior to the PI planning kickoff. Here is where the teams go in and say, along with the business owner, right, this is my business value that I anticipate I'll be delivering. And at the end of the PI, right, teams can actually go in and enter an actual business value. And using your planned and actual business value, Metronome creates charts and says, just to see how are teams aligning themselves? Are they aligned towards the objectives, right? All those measures become so much more easier using Metronome. So these are some of the ways how teams can do the planning. The next part of the thing that Ernesto's the next part of the question that Ernesto had was, how can Metronome help us with program execution? Let me show you, right? It's great. Teams came together for PI planning. Metronome helped them. They were able to go in and break the features down to stories, do all the planning, identify risks, identify the business value for the objectives. All that was done very well. What happens as teams start going and implementing the PI, right? They start going and doing their iteration planning, iteration execution. What happens then? How can teams still go in and visualize and see if they are on track? Right, some certain cases you might not even realize it, right? Teams can start slowing down because, for various reasons, maybe blockers came up, impediments came up, and you won't even realize because everybody is dispersed. But with a tool, with an amazing tool like Metronome, how can teams still go in and track where they are? Let's start at the portfolio level, right? I'll come back to this PI and show you the PI dashboard. So at the portfolio level, so there are a lot of dashboards at every level, right? So here you can track the progress of the epic. So these are all the epics that are in implementation, right, phase. And when an epic is pulled into implementation and you have stories identified for this epic, we can track that easily. How many stories are being implemented at the end of each iteration? What's the cumulative story points? How does that compare to the initial estimation? all that becomes easily, teams can go in and easily visualize that. Now let's go in and see if how are the defects being addressed, right? Here is I went in and I filtered by this our art, right, a DODR, and you can clearly see, right, at the end of this PI7, right, there's one release, and within that 3-month time frame, and there were 8 defects that were addressed. Right? All that information can be easily visualized. There are a lot of flow charts as well, Metronome supports, and these flow charts show you how many business-facing stories were completed, how many enablers were completed, right? How about the debts, right? Both your business as well as technical debts. How many debts were addressed at the end of each PI? How many defects were addressed, right? All that information teams can track easily and visualize it. Once a story enters an implementation, how long does it take for this to be completed, right? How long does a story take for it to move from in progress to completion stage? All that can be easily derived. Now let's take a look at some of the charts at the program level, right? Teams can easily see, right? Again, if there are any epics at the program level, those can be measured, right? Teams can easily go in and see what are all the features that are part of each release, and they can go in and track where these features are, like I showed you before. They can also go in and, this was the program predictability measure chart that I mentioned before, using the planned and actual business value of the objective, right? Teams can easily see, are they within the green band, right? Not to punish any teams, but just to see if everybody is aligned to the objectives. What's the velocity of the train? All this information is easily available. Now, I was talking about the PI that we are implementing, right? How do we track the progress of this PI? How are the features, right? Are we on track? Will we complete in the next couple of weeks, right? Because this particular PI will end on June 15th, right? Obviously, some of these features are red, which means that, you know, we have to adjust. Maybe there are some stories that will may not be completed on time, right? So how are we doing? How many stories were completed, right? How about the load, right? How are the teams working on? How many debts are they addressing? How many business-facing stories? How many defects are being addressed in this particular iteration, right? 7.4 iteration. What are the number of stories that are in progress? All that information is readily available. Now, let's say I gave you the example of a blocker popping up, right? Let's take that web application team that that we used for our planning. And David, I'll show you now how the iteration burn down chart works, right? For when I access this particular team's dashboard, you know, I see the velocity versus capacity again, a very useful metric for us to know how are we doing, right? How many defects are being addressed, right? Let's go to the iteration dashboard for this particular team. When we saw earlier, right, when David asked us the question, we saw that there were 5 tasks to be completed, right? As of today, there are 5 stories. So this becomes so much more easier, right? If you're doing a daily stand-up, imagine we are 100% remote. We're all dialing in. Imagine that scene, and then see everybody is looking at the same set of screens. So everybody is clear, and the message is clear. There is no ambiguity, right? They access the storyboard. We just realized that the search by facility type is, there is a blocker on this particular task. Now, what happens then, right? So let's say I'm one of the team member and I tell my Scrum Master, in this case, Ernesto, and tell him I'm going to raise this to a blocker, right? It's because of management decision. Perhaps the Elasticsearch engine cannot handle this, right? Search engine cannot handle it. So what happens? Just notice, Metronome asked me, obviously you elevated this task to a blocker or an impediment. Now what happens? Is there a risk to the program increment? Absolutely, right? The program increment may not be completed on time if this particular risk or if this particular blocker is not addressed. So I'm not going to go in and add a risk, but I can add a risk right here. Notice what happens to the program board, right? And I went in and I added a blocker at the task level. You see this particular story that has those two tasks has been blocked too. Notice what happens at the dependency level. I'm going to click on show dependencies, right? Notice that this particular feature also gets blocked. So now our program managers, our RTEs who are visualizing this program board every day, right? They are obviously not looking at the team level team boards. They know that they have to take an action immediately. Otherwise, there's a risk in this particular iteration or this particular PI not being completed on time, right? All that becomes so critical and becomes so much more easier when everything is stored, all the important information is stored in one central place like Metronome. And let's go back to the iteration dashboard, right? And see what happens. I'm going to refresh the screen, right? Notice what happens here, right? There's a blocker right here. It's telling me, it's showing me in red that, you know, there's a blocker and I have to go in and take an action. I can click on that and I can see that this particular task is being blocked. Now, as I go in and complete these, let's say I go and mark this particular task as complete, right? This is pretty much what the teams do. I can go in and mark this particular task complete. Then I can go in and mark the story complete. Notice what happens to my dashboard. Right, I can see that there's 44%. Earlier it said 0% complete, right? 44% complete. And notice that this task, the number of tasks that are still there, number of stories that are to do also decreased, right? And my iteration burn down is being updated with 15 story points, right? Because that's the number of stories I just completed today. So I'm left with a lot fewer work to be done before the end of this particular sprint, right? All that information becomes so much more easier when everything is stored in one central place. Now I can go in and resolve this blocker, right? I can click on this particular task and go in and say, you know, this has been resolved. Right? And then when I go in and see this, the blocker has been resolved. So everything becomes, now all of us are looking at Metronome, right? Visualize if all of us are working together on this train, right? It becomes so much more easier and there's no confusion. So this is how, you know, the two things that Ernesto earlier mentioned about was the PI planning. Most of us are struggling with distributed PI planning and program execution. And I wanted to highlight how these two become so much more easier using Metronome. Just wanted to pause again and see if you have any questions.
Raj?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Nirajan here in the audience asks a question and he wants to know, how do we do capacity planning?
Yes, I can show you that. Because in our case, right, in our case, let me pull up that PI7. Yes, in this case, this particular PI, right, it was already in progress. That is why you did not see that. But let's say if this particular iteration was not already under progress, I would be able to do it. Let's go in and see a PI 8. Right? Typically, when you start your PI planning, right, you do it before your PI starts. Let me show you what happens in case of PI 8. Bear with me. There might be certain features that may not have a lot of stories, but I'll show you. So let's assume again we are a web application team, right? This is how you would do your capacity planning. It doesn't have a lot of stories like the PI7 that we saw, right? Doesn't have a lot of features. It just has 2 features. But you know, let's assume we are about to start our PI planning for PI 8. the very first thing the teams do is come in and set the capacity for each iteration, right? So they go in and say 56, right? 78, right? Maybe 65, right? 72. So what Metronome does is, as I go in and start, notice what happens here, right? As I start dragging and dropping the stories onto that particular iteration, Metronome calculates the load and shows you how much more bandwidth that the teams have, right, before they become fully loaded, right? So this is how Metronome helps you with capacity allocation. They go in and teams can go in and set the capacity for each iteration, and as teams go in and start committing to stories, right, that's when your load is calculated and is visible. Does it answer your question, Niranjan?
Yes, thank you, Raj. Well, I also got one question that came in via private chat instead of the everyone, so I'll read it here. We use Jira for tracking our user stories. Is there possible integration between the two tools?
The reason I started laughing is absolutely. The reason I start laughing is this is a question that we are asked multiple times. I'll show you the Jira integration, right? For this particular team, the integration team, right, we have added some stories in Jira. Let me go to PI7. That's where I've added a lot of stories. It will show you for that particular team. Okay, let's go to the program board of PI7. Okay. Now, right, this is a push to prod, right? So this is a story that's actually in Jira. So notice what happened, right? I opened that particular story on the program board in Metronome, and I clicked on edit story. So it's actually pulling up Jira. So we have this bi-directional integration between Jira, where you actually go in and add stories in Jira and it updates in Metronome, and vice versa as well. So I can go in and status a story, move it from one status to another, mark it from in progress to completed, and then it goes in, it updates in Metronome, or if you're updating it in Metronome, it updates Jira as well. So the answer to your question, we do a bi-directional integration between Jira and Metronome. And in fact, not just Jira, right? Any application that is accessible with a REST API, we'll be able to integrate it. It could be your DevOps tool, it could be your TFS, VSTS. We integrate with all of those out of the box.
Excellent, thank you, Raj. We're getting questions and you're able to answer those quickly, so thank you for continuing to do that. We have one more. Will you be able to assign tasks or stories to engineering or a person working on it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Unfortunately, I won't be able to show you. We are truly agile in developing Metronome as well. That has been our #1 request, where we actually go in and assign a task to a particular person, right, who will be actually doing, even though SAFe doesn't talk about people, right? It stops at the team level. This has been a requirement from one of our existing users who wants to be able to calculate the resources, right? They want to see the burn rate of each resource. It goes against Agile, I know, bear with me, but that was a request, and it's almost it's going to be pushed to production in probably in the next couple of weeks. It's right now going through regression tests. Unfortunately, I can't show you, but it's a capability that we are going to be releasing in Metronome very shortly, where you're going to select a task and say, this task is being implemented by this resource.
Excellent. And we have a follow-up question to your previous one regarding Jira integration, if that is real-time integration from Jira.
Yes, it is a real-time integration, real-time bidirectional integration.
Excellent. Thank you, Raj. Is it fair to say that Jira Align is a big competitor for you?
Yes. Absolutely, Jira Align is a big competitor for us, but price-wise, you all know Jira Align, also called as Agile Craft, is very expensive, and that's where we provide all the sophistication as well as the capabilities of scaling at the program and portfolio level. But however, price-wise, we are closer to Jira and not closer to Jira Align. That's where the big difference between Jira Align and Metronome is.
And that's a great segue, Raja, because we have 3 minutes left, and I want to reciprocate and thank you for coming on. You guys have been so gracious to present, but I also want to give you the opportunity to allow folks to seek more information from you if they're interested in testing or using your product.
Muchas
Absolutely.
gracias.
So this is the last slide, and I would like to leave everyone with this particular slide. Has a lot of information about us. So if you want to follow us on whether it's on LinkedIn, or there's a lot of videos that we post on our YouTube channel, please go to youtube.com and search for Metronome Orchestrated Agile, and you'll see not just videos of me talking, but videos of webinars we have done with our partners at Scaled Agile Inc. With Dean Leffingwell himself. I've done a couple of webinars. You'll see that as well. So please go subscribe to our Metronome channel on YouTube. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, and here is the contact information, and this is our website, www.radustech.io, and please, if you're interested, please subscribe, and we'll be able to give a more thorough demo of, because today I did just a scratch the surface of Metronome, but if you want a more detailed demo of Metronome, please go in and sign up there, and we'll be happy to do a demo for you and your organization.
Hey, Ernesto, one quick question, please. This is being recorded, yes?
It is, Bill, yes.
How can you share the recording of this with your audience?
So we can put it on the YouTube page for Agile Genesis, and also include that link in the Meetup as well. So that'll be available usually no more than 2 days after we record.
Excellent, because as soon as you can do that, that way people can go in and relive this if they're inclined to do so at their leisure, as well as be able to focus in on anything specific that has their interest. And we would encourage you all that we hope you got excited about some of the things that you saw and that you would like to learn more. We'd be humbled and excited to be able to share more about the tool and why there is so much excitement about it. So, we just want to say thank you very much, Ernesto, for allowing us to participate in this, and for you all there, for your questions, for your interests, and for taking time on a Wednesday afternoon. Thank you very much for everything.
I echo that. Yeah, Raj, go ahead,
I
please.
want to share Bill, and yes, Ernesto, I want to share Bill's sentiment as well. Thank you everyone for your time, and Ernesto, a huge thanks to you for inviting us and letting us share Metronome with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for presenting, Raj. Very valuable information. Bill, thank you for following up with all of the answers, and hopefully we'll get to do this again as we continue to learn more about the tool. Thank you all for attending. Have a great one.
Muchas gracias. Take care.
Bye-bye.